If you're consistently trying to polish yourself into this brand safe version of what you think success looks like, you're most likely editing out the very thing that people connect to. So in this episode, we're going to talk about reclaiming your voice, your flaws, your filler words, all the mistakes that you made and the tangents that you go off on, because ultimately your mess is your magic. So let's get into it. Hello, kittens. This is a bonus episode. It's going to probably be like episode 6 of what I've recorded, but I'm not going to label it as episode 6. I feel like I want to put this one up right away because I'm inspired and convicted with what I received as a revelation during the gym workout today and listening to one of my favorite authors on the Diary of a CEO podcast. Which is actually kind of funny because I just bought one of his books a while ago, maybe a few months ago, and I was blown away by it. And then they were on the podcast once, and I absorbed everything they said, and then they came back for another episode. And I have only listened to 1 hour of it so far, and I was so inspired. I was so convicted. I was motivated. And I felt like this is something that really needs to be talked about. I need to talk about this specifically. I need to admit and confront this side of me where I feel like I need to be this polished version of myself. And in this episode, the author that I really admire is talking a lot about AI, which a lot of the episodes on the Diary of a CEO podcast have been around AI lately. And he made a lot of good points. The author, he says, he's not in the AI business at all, but he is in the humanity business. And I got hit with a lot of clarity listening to this episode. And the biggest thing I noticed was he showed up in the episode just fully human, full of filler words, interruptions, just like real humanity, real energy. I was like, I'm listening to him and I'm hearing him say right? Or he'd start off doing the things that I do all the time in the podcast where you start off on one conversation and then you get inspiration in the middle of your sentence and you just go off and start saying something else. Ultimately, they always end up tying in together, but it starts off with a few words and then interjects and goes a different direction, still at same end goal, though, if that makes sense. And I just saw it and I felt so seen. And I also felt angry at how society has made us think that in order for us to be successful podcasters or successful speakers or whatever, that your image and all of this has to be polished so fucking perfectly that you have to spend hours removing filler words. Like my episodes for the last 5 episodes here I've been using Descript and I loved it because it was removing so many of my ums and ahs, my repeated words, my little weird tangents I would go off of. And it was cleaning them up. It was shortening my word gaps. Like I was really obsessed with it. I was like, oh man, this is going to make me, successful in this way because I'm using this idea of what it has to look like. Oh, and I'm getting so angry talking about it. And yet here is this best-selling author. I don't know how many books he's written. I know for sure he's written the one, and I know he's writing another one. He's also like a TEDx speaker. And just like somebody who I when they listen or when they speak, I listen. Like I'm drawn to this person's energy and the words that they share because they talk so much about humanity and connection. And here he is using all the same filler words and sounding exactly like I do on a podcast. And I was like, what in the world? How have we deceived ourselves into thinking, not even deceived ourselves, but been deceived by a society or whatever it is telling us that this is what it has to look like, that you can't have all these filler words and you won't be taken seriously if you say and or and right and like. And it was just very inspiring and also made me feel like, okay, this is a real human. This is somebody that I want to listen to. And I don't hear all those filler words. I hear the energy. I feel the energy. I feel the humanity, and it makes the words land. And to me, it was really inspiring. And I was convicted. I was like, I need to stop. I need to stop using AI to cut out all my filler words, all my pauses, and the repetition out of my podcast because I was starting to feel like it was a little inauthentic. I was starting to feel like, man, I don't like this standard that I'm putting out there because I know if I'm on it, I literally thought this the other day. if I am a guest on a podcast, I'm going to, and go off on tangents. And I then am going to get into my head about not being as good as what people would have expected me to. And I spiral, I get into this overthinking crisis. And I was realizing how much this idea of things needing to be perfect really kills humanity. It kills the human energy behind connection. And that imperfection, I truly believe, is the key to creating connection. In the podcast, they had so many great conversations, and I'm only halfway through, but they talked a lot about how the imperfectionism of humanity is what causes us to connect with people. The age of social media and the internet, and this is only going to get worse because of AI, but it causes us to curate a version of ourselves, even throughout our beauty standards, that is very inauthentic. It is very curated. It is very polished. And it removes the humanity. It removes the mistakes. It removes the fuck ups. It removes, and cancel culture is a big problem with this too, because we can't make mistakes or, I shouldn't say that, but people who can't really be held accountable for their mistakes often see the worst effects of cancel culture. But it does have a tendency to go a little bit crazy and excessive, because it takes away the fear of making a mistake, takes away again from the humanity. So then we use AI, we use all of these inauthentic, unhuman things to try to make us perfect. And of course, there's going to be some sort of wall that hits where it doesn't resonate with people. And yes, AI, it sounded clean, but it just ultimately didn't sound like me, I found. And maybe you might feel that in those first few episodes. And I'm keeping them up because this is all about a learning experience. And this is all about finding purpose and showing the journey behind what all of this looks like. I still know that the intention was correct and was right, and the energy infused in it was right. And I'm so glad I had that check, and then the alignment of listening to this episode validated things that I feel. But we're so used to filtering everything that we forget what even unfiltered feels like, and I think that a lot of that is the reason why there is a loneliness epidemic and why there is a suicide epidemic and stress epidemic. I realized that I was editing out the exact thing that people could actually relate to and resonate with. And just being able to hear somebody who I admire and whose books I really enjoy and whose content I love consuming sounds like me, sound human, just validated and dismantled all those ideas in my head about how I thought I needed to be in order to have a good podcast or have a career in X, Y, and Z, or be able to impact and help people through this podcast. Doesn't matter how many times I say and use filler words, because if the message is supposed to land and it's supposed to resonate with the right people, it will. I even know that a lot in the first season, when I had the most episodes, when we did that 45 episode stint, I did edit out a bit of them for sure, but I was doing it manually, and your girl had no tolerance for that. And yet that episode, that season 1, was one of the best seasons ever. I loved that season. I was pouring my heart into that season. And I know that season also resonated with a lot of people, and it helped a lot of people. And so I'm using all of this, I'm sharing all of this as an example and sharing the journey and the behind the scenes so that you too can be inspired to know that you don't need to polish yourself up in order to have this brand safe version of success. And he made a really great point that was quite eye-opening. I've used the word scale and even have it in a slogan for the unicorn, and I don't even know if it resonates now as much after hearing this, but he said something. I'm not sure if he was quoting somebody, I can't remember now, but he basically said you can't scale what's special. And, when something is, you can't scale what makes something special, because the second you do it, it stops being special. And I was listening to that, and I was thinking about how we have this push and this pressure now to create AI avatars of ourselves. And these AI avatars are meant to scale us. I literally just read an email about it today, and I just felt icky about it. I love AI and I love learning all of this and trying to be an early adopter and staying ahead of things because I know it's going to be a big part of our future soon. But I read it and I was just like, oh, this just makes me feel gross, because when I also consume content from some of these creators who I know are using AI avatars, like I can tell, um, it feels just, it doesn't feel real to me. It feels inauthentic, and the human connection is lost for me. And maybe that's something we will be desensitized to over time. I don't doubt it. We become desensitized to wars. We can turn a blind eye over to what's happening in Gaza and scroll past children being murdered in our feed and then laugh at somebody's reel in the same breath. Like, we're not meant to also have that. It's like we might become desensitized to all of that. But right now, I can feel it. I can feel too when somebody curates a response. And there's just so many great points that were made in this podcast episode. So if you're interested in listening to this episode, send me a DM or comment on this, and comment on my Instagram about it, and I'll send it to you. But there is a difference between being intentional and being sterile, which I feel like is the problem when you're so heavily curated by AI and you're so heavily integrating AI into it because you're trying to scale you. And it's all very icky, and it's all very capitalist, and it's all just very blah to me. And so do I think that it will have, there is a time and a space to use it? Absolutely, 100%. But I just felt like I needed to share that polishing it up, and so much to the degree where you're removing the parts of you that make it you, are essentially stealing the very power of the connection you will make with people. Because I've made it, like the title of the episode suggests, your mess is your magic. Your ability to be imperfect and a flawed human is what makes you an incredible human, is what makes people connect to you in the first place. And also understanding too, what makes your content valuable, what makes your words of wisdom valuable, is what you've lived, not what you've curated. And he even mentions this about his book. He says he wrote a great book, and it's not even about the book, it's about the journey that was behind the book. And we have this saying that we use all the time as humans, that life is not about the destination, it's about the journey. And this is the same thing. AI is so used to just giving us the destination, the solution, the end result. What happens to the whole journey that curated our wisdom, that caused us to grow, that helped us evolve, that helped us learn how to be human, learn how to be friends, learn how to love, learn how to apologize? All of that comes from a lived experience, not a curated one. And your magic, your mess is your magic. Your magic comes from the dirt. My burnout, my breakdowns, my in the mud business failures, that's the gold. That's where I learn the most. And that even still burns to say because it's still so fresh. Is it going to be easier in 10 years? And am I going to be able to say that was one of the best experiences I could have gone through? Probably. That's what he said. He said when he hit his burnout and he hit his rock bottom in depression, it was one of the best times of his life, looking back, not the best times of his life, but one of the most valuable times. And I do know that will be very true as this process unfolds for me personally. But I feel like I have to remind myself on this journey that I can't use AI as my pathway to depth. I can't polish my way to wisdom. I have to share my truth. I have to share it raw and vulnerably, and what that looks like with all my filler words and all of my repetitions and all of my tangents, because the value I bring isn't in this perfect delivery, it's in my lived truth. And another thing too is if I feel like if I avoid the mess, then I avoid the magic. If people try to skip the parts that give them credibility, what do you have in the end? Like, you have no authority, you have no skin in the game. You're just a machine yourself. You've pretty much allowed yourself to be replaced by something inhuman, and I don't want that. Because it is the suffering, it is the detours, it is the pivots, it's the shit that I've had to eat that has shaped my authority. You have to eat that shit before you earn the mic, That's a great saying, one that I really love. And if you haven't felt it, you can't teach it. So this is just your friendly reminder that you're not meant to sound like a machine. Kelly, I'm talking to you. I'm talking to myself. You're meant to sound like human with something to say. Let people feel those pauses. Take them along on the journey of your tangents. Let them experience your energy and your vulnerability and the rawness of it so that they can connect to it, because that's what makes it yours. And this is something that you can apply in your business. This is something that you can apply throughout your life, understanding that it doesn't even need to be AI related or having this consumption with AI. It's just also in this weird polished version of ourselves that we think our business needs us to be in order to be successful. And I fell for this trap even with the unicorn. I fell for it. And I think that that's what caused a lot of my burnout as well. Like looking back, there are so many things that I see that compounded to my burnout. And that was another big factor, was thinking that it had to look and be a certain way, or I had to look and be a certain way. I couldn't share things. My attitude, the way that I spoke, or different things had to come across a certain way. And I think a lot of this too is a human nature to want to be accepted, to want to find a community. A little bit of people pleasing is all in there. And AI is at the brink of taking those things and amplifying them and making it worse, because it gives you the ability to appear very polished. It gives you the opportunity to sound 10 times more professional, or, have the language of the gods roll off your tongue. But yet it's inauthentic. It isn't you. It's not spoken with your energy. It's not spoken from your mind, your heart, your soul. It's literally something you're reading off of a script, or you're regurgitating from the depths of an AI machine. And that does not land. That does not land. People can feel the inauthenticity of it. And I just want to remind you that what it looks like for you is you showing up in your realness and your rawness. Your mess is your magic. Your ability to be imperfect in your business is what is going to make you successful. Because, and I know it's like I said earlier in the episode, you cannot scale something that is special. And that part really convicted me, because it made me look at how I was positioning my business to help entrepreneurs. And I was like, I think I want to pivot again. I don't want to push this idea of scaling, because I want to encourage them to be authentic and special and unique and imperfect. And as long as you continue to be human, you will stay special, which means you cannot scale that. Once it becomes scaled, it's no longer special. I'm going to wrap this up now, because I feel like I could just keep going on off of this topic. But this is Miss K. I'm going to remind you to just let your filler words exist. Keep those ums and ahs. If you want to clean up a little bit of it, I get it. That's fine. I'm still going to end up editing a lot of this video, probably just the parts where I had to pause it for construction and different things. But let the truth come out sideways, even if it has to. Because your mess is your magic. Your ability to be imperfect is what will make you successful. And you cannot scale what is special. So stay special, stay you, and I love you. I'll see you guys in the next episode. This is Miss K. I'm out for now. Bye.